I now have the privilege to introduce Jenny Ligon. Jenny will actually serve as she will present our amazing Student Grand Challenge finalist presentations, which I think is an amazing opportunity, some amazing work done by our next generation. But let me quickly introduce Jenny. So Jenny is a Director for Education and Workforce Development for the Cross-Border Threat Screening and Supply Chain Defense Center of Excellence. Now that is a mouthful at Texas A&M. So we love Texas A&M, but as a War Eagle at Auburn, 21st of September, SEC opens up, and I'm going to be not rooting for Texas A&M on that day. So in addition to her role at CBTS, she's also the Assistant Director of the National Center for Therapeutics Manufacturing and the Executive Director for Workforce Development for the Center for Innovation in Advanced Development and Manufacturing, also at Texas A&M. Those are long titles, but they're awesome titles and amazing work. So Jenny, the floor is yours. This is, I think, the coolest part of the day, so thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, this is definitely the most exciting part of the day because we saw some amazing work by the Grand Challenge students. They came together for the first time this week, and I need to tell you a little bit about what the Grand Challenge is first. So we are going to recognize the Center of Excellence students, and we're going to feature the first and second place winners of this year's Center of Excellence Summit Grand Challenge. And for those of you who don't know, the Grand Challenge is the Center of Excellence Summit's version of a hackathon. And this year's challenge brought together 24 students from across the Center of Excellence enterprise to participate in multidisciplinary, team-based competition to address a critical issue in Homeland Security. This year's challenge focused on unmanned aerial systems and the threats they pose to Homeland Security. And the students were asked to identify an emerging threat to the Homeland Security posed by UASs, okay, and to develop a strategy to counter it. And this was no small feat, indeed. Leading up to this week's events, the students participated in, so this was the Grand Challenge prompt, sorry about that. Leading up to this week's events, the students participated in a series of DHS component agency webinars, each designed to give the students context and insight into this very complicated issue. In the interest of time, I will not read off everybody's names, but you can see who the webinar presenters were here on the screen. And on behalf of the Centers of Excellence, we would like to thank them for their time and contributions to the Grand Challenge. So they got to participate in these webinars in advance of coming here this week to give them a little background on unmanned aerial systems and the threats that they pose to DHS. Now, fast forward to Monday of this week, the students met face-to-face for the first time here at George Mason University and were given roughly 24 hours to brainstorm and develop their team's approach to the challenge prompt. Y'all, this was like herding cats, okay? They just came together for the first time. Nobody knows anybody. They all have very diverse, different backgrounds. And in teams of 3 to 5 participants, they basically had to come to a consensus about what they wanted to pose. And with the diversity of their backgrounds, it was a challenge. But they did an amazing job. All 5 of the teams had excellent presentations. The panel of judges agreed that all of their items that they proposed and should be implemented. So they all did a fantastic job. Yesterday morning, the 5-student team presented their ideas to pitch competition before DHS subject matter experts. The judges for the competition are each identified here in this slide. And again, in the frame of time, I'm not going to read them off, but you can see them all listed here. And my colleagues and I are tremendously grateful for their time and for performing the unenviable task of having to select the first and second place winners. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce to you the second place winners of the Grand Challenge who will present their solution to unmanned aerial system threats. So if you'll join me on the stage here, William Case from the CRC Center of Excellence, Annette Colon Mercado from Alert, Ha Lee from BTI, Danielle Dobbs from MSC, and Jin Lee from CINA. Following their pitch, we will offer a few minutes for questions from the audience.
My name is William Case, and our project is drone-based MIR laser-induced thermal imaging for the identification of chemical substances. It's 8:40 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and a UAV carrying 13.44 pounds of fentanyl is whisking across the border fence approximately 2 miles west of the San Ysidro port of entry. The UAV flies just low enough to evade detection by traditional radar and just high enough to get over the border fence. This scenario may sound familiar because it's happened before. This is the threat that the DHS is facing. Small UAVs are carrying drugs, high energetics, and other illicit substances across the border every day. The challenge is that low-flying UAVs cannot accurately be detected or identified with high confidence, and there exists no solution to detect the chemicals on drones. Enter the Interceptor Program. The program is comprised of 3 major parts: ground-based radar, intercepting drones, and a mid-infrared quantum cascade laser. The Interceptor Program uses the ground-based radars mounted by the border that will fill the gap that has been left by existing infrastructures and systems. The system is able to detect small unidentified UAVs flying across the border. Second, drones will be dispatched proactively when a small UAV's trajectory and speed suggest that it will cross the border. Dispatching the drone will also allow DHS to identify the threats with a higher degree of accuracy. This accuracy is important because its increased accuracy could mean the difference between detecting a small drone and a large bird. Third, the Interceptor drone, using a chemical sensing system, a mid-infrared quantum cascade laser. The laser is able to identify contents carried by the drone from up to 25 meters away. Even more impressive, the QCL is able to identify payloads as small as a single gram. Once the substance is matched to our chemical substance database, the information is then escalated to the appropriate law enforcement agency. In San Ysidro, the Border Patrol will be notified, and in the Florida Keys, the Coast Guard will be notified. The scope of the project is only detection and identification. The results from the drones will immediately be available to DHS for the appropriate action to be taken. The singular scope of our objective will work within already established precedent. The Interceptor Program will leverage existing infrastructures while simultaneously addressing their shortcomings as it pertains to small UAVs. Human resources will be reduced with automated security missions, which will allow agents to be deployed elsewhere. The program will increase situational awareness and decrease response time. The program, by providing accurate and actionable information, the result will be reliable technology that is economically sound with the future in mind, and the program will not only minimize the illicit chemicals that cross the border, but also identify chemicals in near real time for a quick response from the appropriate law enforcement. No system is perfect, and ours is limited by the range of drones and sensors. The program will incur added expense of the on-ground radar system, human expertise, data center, and maintenance costs. Anything with a camera is liable to raise concerns about privacy, but what we can say unequivocally is that every drone that is deployed will be done so in order to detect and identify another drone and won't be roaming freely. This acknowledgement of limitations is not to be construed as a deterrent, but instead to be transparent about the budgetary requirements and make suggestions for future research. In conclusion, the program will lead to the development of on-ground radar detection systems, the implementation of the first drone-based MIR laser-induced thermal imaging for identification and chemical substances, the enhancement of small UAV detection and illicit chemical substance identification will result in the reduction of human resources and response time. So the next time it's 8:40 p.m. on a Wednesday night and a UAV is carrying 13.44 pounds of fentanyl and is whisking across the border fence approximately 2 miles west of the San Ysidro port of entry, our system will be there to intercept it, and in turn help to address the 130 people that die every day from overdosing on opioids. Because that's what this is really about. It's about solving the problems that's often hit so near and dear to so many of us. It's about safeguarding those 130 American souls every day, and it's about safeguarding our homeland, and it's about safeguarding our values. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to open up the floor for a few questions. We have about 5 minutes, so got it. So raise your hands if you have some questions about this innovative approach to UASs. Yes, sir.
Great job. 2 questions. You talked about the added expense, but at the same time, the reduction of human resources. Did you give any thought of which was the balancing act? In other words, we're reducing costs one way, and overall, you come out ahead. And the second thing is, when you actually start talking about the privacy concerns, what were the elements that you were looking at? And what did you think about those aspects of what you have to deal with?
And I think the first part of your question was about, if I'm wrong, correct me. The balance between the cost saving, the initial capital cost. Well, I think the way we're looking at it, it's similar in terms of like any tech startup. At the beginning, there are initial capital costs that are what you would consider a little high, but in the long run, the reduction in sort of our human resources will help to balance out that cost. And as technology advances often at the substantial rates that it does, those technology costs will reduce as well, and you may have the option to redeploy those resources or agents elsewhere. And as it pertains to the security concerns, primarily what we were thinking of is because the drones are deployed in response to other drones. So they're not going to be roaming freely. They're only going to be deployed when something's coming our way. The concerns were that, let's say a drone is coming our way and our interceptor is deployed. It'll then on its way to intercept the enemy drone, it could essentially passively see you and your family having dinner. Not intentionally, but passively. Does that answer the question?
I was wondering, what is do you know what the effectiveness of the radar is? Because apparently it's a sequence of events. So your success cannot be any higher than the radar's effectiveness. And also, how do you deal with multiple UASs? So if the enemy launches 3 or 4, UASs at the same time to try to confuse you. How does your system deal with that?
You mentioned about the radar's effectiveness. I think that's based on the technology that we have. It's really based on what type of radar it is. But you will have stronger resolution if it's closer to the radar. So in terms of, let's say, the drone is coming to the border wall, so we would have like some radar close to the border wall, so it can detect it sooner than if it was behind the border wall. So that is kind of the answer for the proximity of the detection range of the radar. And what was that one? Could you repeat the second question again? Oh, so that's kind of an easy answer. You just send out more drones. So the concept of our Interceptor program is when you have enemy jets coming into our airspace, we don't just send out one interceptor. We send out a couple or a squadron of interceptors. So that was kind of our vision, to intercept them, but we don't shoot them down. We kind of identify who they are, what they're carrying, things like that. So in that sense, we would send multiple. Thank you.
I think we may have time for only one more question.
Hi. First off, great work. Very exciting. I'm interested in knowing the applicability to like monitoring of buildings. What's the capability as far as being able to detect like chemical stocks, chemical inventory inside of a building?
Hi. Yeah, great question. The system that we created or that we propose is built to detect for 25 meters from the sample. So if you have a sample that is in that range, it could be detected by the sensor.
Inside of a building, even if the sample is inside of a building.
That would be a little bit harder because we are talking about open space from this perspective from UAV, I'm sorry. I think that when you're talking about from a building, it will create interference, and that would be something that has to be put to research before giving you the exact answer.
And I think what we'd like to do is maybe have the students stick around after we end this panel, and then if you have additional questions, I know you do out there, we can touch base with them, okay? Now, let's give them a round of applause. Great work. Now, I would like to welcome to the stage our DHS Center of Excellence Summit Student Grand Challenge Platinum Industry Partner from General Dynamics Information Technology to say a few words and to present the teams with their certificates. Please welcome Mr. Michael W. Saunders, the Senior Director of the Intelligence and Homeland Security Division at GDIT. We thank you for your generous support and also your active engagement in the Grand Challenge.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of 35,000 GDIT employees, many of whom go to work each day to support the Homeland Security mission, we could not be more thrilled to be with you today in honoring these students and the Centers of Excellence. GDIT's and General Dynamics engagement in the Center of Excellence mission began about 10 years ago in 2009 when Dr. George Zarur at DHS&T invited General Dynamics to participate in the Advanced Development for Security Applications ADSA workshop at Northeastern University. The ADSA workshops were sponsored by the Alert Center of Excellence. And over several years, I personally had the opportunity to engage directly in those workshops. And what I really learned firsthand as a participant at ADSA is that the DHS Center of Excellence model is built on several things. One, active engagement of mission owners from DHS headquarters and components. Innovation from academia, from students like you see at the table today. Participation from federal labs. And active engagement of industry partners, all in the context of a problem statement of national significance. And I tell you, we couldn't see those principles embodied better than we've seen them this morning in this presentation and the next presentation to come. Please join me in honoring these students for their outstanding work and presentation. So I think now it's my honor to help present the award certificates to these students and to recognize their great work. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now it's my distinct pleasure to hear the solutions proposed by the first place winners of the Grand Challenge, the blue team, which includes, if you'll please join me, Emily Belk from the Alert Center of Excellence, Tristan Goers from ADAC, Keshav Kasi Chanula from BTI, Trinity Reed from CIRI, and Emilio Ruiz from CAOE.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I am pleased to introduce the Automated Drone Integrated Information System, which was our team's approach to the issue of identification and classification of drones in the U.S. airspace. This system will store information about drones as well as potential drone threats in an overarching database that we hope many DHS component agencies can utilize. For the first part of information that our system will store will be information about the identification of the drone. Each drone does have a unique identification number, and if you do register that drone, it will be associated with a name, a purchase location of the drone, as well as what the intended use of that drone may be. We would also want to include information here about any criminal or educational history for each user that might lead us to predict what their use of the drone may be. The next information we would want to store would be information about the security of each person. This would include information about how they have used the drone, any flight history, so that we could check, are they flying it in the same areas that they normally do? If it's a commercial drone, is it following the proper path that it should be? And if it wasn't, or if we noticed any flags here, we would want to make sure to flag the drone so that we could notice that it is acting abnormally. And so in that case, it would be a commercial drone flying off course. If we do flag a drone, we would want to move forward into our detection and classification step. This is where we would use technologies that are already in place, like radar, audio, GPS, to make our best prediction about what is the imposed threat by that drone. So this could range from anything like carrying drugs across the border to maybe an explosive in a no-fly zone. You might be wondering, how are you going to know if a drone is acting abnormally? To do this, we've integrated the Automated Point Evaluation System, which we like to call APES. This is going to enumerate the threat level of each drone by assigning more points as we perceive a larger amount of threat. So we will have 3 classifications of drones under the system. The first will be the government drones, which we will assign the lowest initial number of points because, fingers crossed, they're out there doing what they're supposed to be doing. We will also have our commercial drones, which will be acting for companies to carry out their business, like Amazon and Google. And then we will also have our personal drones, and these are associated with the highest number of points initially because we do know that there's a lot of variability out there for what these drones may be used for. These point values would fluctuate over time based off of the person's activity with the drone or the commercial's use of the drone. And then if they did cross that point threshold, we would want to flag them. This would hopefully affect and be in use by all DHS agencies who would like to utilize it. We're hoping that this database would be accessible across all of these agencies, and we would also want to possibly use HISN to store our database and maybe incorporate some of the information that they already have, as well as information from other government agencies, to make sure that the information in our database is as thorough as it can possibly be, so that we can make our best prediction about the threat imposed by each drone. This is actually a relatively low-cost system, as most of the technologies that we will use in our detection and classification step are already in place. So we would only need manpower to build the system, and then we would also need to make sure that we do have that interagency cooperation so that we can make sure everything runs smoothly. The benefits of this is that it would be the first drone tracking infrastructure, that it would eventually be self-sustainable. This means that as we gather enough data, we'd be able to incorporate AI to help us predict which drones do impose a threat and which don't, which would limit the amount of human interference that we need in those earlier stages of detection. And for this last point, can I get a show of hands for anyone who'd like to make some money off of Amazon? Me too, me too. So this is what we call our Tsa Precheck. So you might have heard of Tsa Precheck. My mom has it. We go to the airport with her. She's like, see you on the other side, you know? And basically, this would allow companies to come to us, pay us some money, and then they would go through an initial thorough round of screening and be included in as a trusted partner in our system. So we'd lower their initial point value so that we wouldn't be interrupting their flow of business as often. To help our system run as efficiently as possible, we would like to implement a few policy changes as well. So this would include an automatic drone registration whenever anyone purchases a drone. This is to limit the amount of drones that we have to flag for being unidentifiable in our airspace. We would also like to make sure that the interfacing with our program is as streamlined as possible. So we want to make sure that we are working with those private companies to get information about what their use of the drone is and any potential paths that they may take, as well as making sure that we are getting enough information from all government agencies that we need to so that we can compile our database. We also do want to make sure that there's a proper drone threat response in place. So if we do identify and predict a threat that a drone is causing, how are we going to step in and mitigate that threat so that it is no longer a harm to our airspace? So overall, this application is a database that will increase situational awareness of drones in our airspace across all DHS component agencies.
Excellent job, Emily, good job. Okay, I know that you probably have some questions about this one, so let's see those hands come up. Don't be shy. Okay, right here, in the red.
Would your registration requirement for places like Amazon and Google also have a fee associated with it that could help fund this program?
I'm always down to make more money if you are, so that would be something that could be looked into for companies looking to use a high level of traffic in our airspace.
Have you given consideration on how you would detect a low radar cross-section drone, especially one that's homemade and not registered?
The traditional radars right now don't really detect something that are low flying, but as I have done a bit of research online, I could see that there can be a few modifications done to the radars that are right now to detect low flying drones. And added to that, something like a personal drone, as small as that you would really use, I don't think it poses a potential threat to anyone, because those are very low flying and they don't carry much weight with them. So I don't think that would be a real issue, and there might be few which we can consider as an outlier.
In addition, a non-registered drone would generally still have a unique identification number associated with that drone, and if it was unidentifiable and not associated with the person, we would flag it, which is why we do want to incorporate our our automatic registration so that we don't flag drones that might not pose a threat just because they are unidentifiable.
Gia's got a question.
talk about the privacy concerns
So
from the side of the drone user?
So I think when you do fly a drone in our airspace, it is, I think we should be able to monitor it because that is something that could have an impact on huge amounts of the population. And so I do believe that because we are only using these technologies to track the drones and then only flag them and move in when they do seem to cause a potential threat, I think that it wouldn't be too much of a privacy issue.
Would you have some type of check in place for any commercial entity that wanted to be part of the Tsa Precheck program that was actually a front for another state actor?
Can you repeat the last part of that? A state.
It was a front for another
It-
state actor.
What is a state actor, if you don't?
Russia, China,
State-sponsored
Hezbollah.
terrorism or things like that.
Okay. We had thought about maybe working with those companies.
So essentially, like, what would occur if a state-sponsored organization that had ill threats towards the United States used a company to front them?
Yes, this would mainly be on the DHS because they would have to find it. Even for a Tsa Precheck, I can't really determine if it's going to happen. It would be something like a Secret Service or the other agencies or other components in DHS to determine that because they would be going through an initial scrutiny because they're paying upfront and they would want to lower their points. So that would be something that other components would have to work in. That's the reason we said interagency cooperation will be a most vital part of it. And that's a kind of a limitation that we would like to overcome.
A question, did you want to finish?
I was going to say that we would also hope that our initial screening process would help us make sure that we are only cooperating with trusted companies.
So in your slide, you listed interagency, great point, and you listed several of the DHS components at the federal level, but the Homeland Security enterprise includes state and local law enforcement. Did you give any thought about the interaction at that level?
We had hoped that this would be a database that was usable even in those smaller local police stations and across the nation so that anyone who wants to utilize the information where any threat is detected can use it and can act as quickly as possible. So we would want that to be something that acts the same as HISN to sort of mitigate any threats that we do see.
And I think we're going to need to cut the questions there. They're going to stick around if you want to discuss with them further, potentially sponsor this project as a summer research project. Let's throw that out there. And I'm going to invite Mr. Saunders up here to help me distribute certificates.
I want to say one word.
Okay.
So it's not lost on me that we're in an audience full of folks that are actively engaged in the R&D process. This team very aptly considered the intellectual property issues surrounding their idea. It was notable that the solution name was copyrighted there on the first slide. So got to make sure that you don't go forward with this without checking with the attorneys, right? Okay. Okay.
Good stuff. Congratulations. And Alan Berson quoted a French poet earlier. I always knew it, and as an American poet, Yogi Berra, who said the future ain't what it used to be. I'm just happy we've got a good future going forward with some of these presentations today. We are now going to a quick break, and just one quick announcement. So we've got the two tracks, 1C and 2C. Physical soft targets in crowded places will be in room 126. and infrastructure threats will be here. So that's going to start at 10 a.m. sharp. And then we're coming into the tail end. We have a great opportunity to hear from S&T's terrific leader soon, and also to go from there. So thank you. Quick break. Awesome job. Please join me again in thanking the students, and let's roll.